Immersed in a memory, Fiora hears a comforting voice promising that she is not alone. Recognizing the warmth, she softly calls out to her mother. Her mother's spirit gently promises to always watch over her from the Great World Tree. Confused about the Great World Tree, Fiora is reminded by her mother that she also has Nora and Alm. The ethereal voice fades as Fiora repeats Alm's name while clinging to the memory. Her mother's presence emphasizes once again that Fiora is never truly isolated. The gentle spirit urges her daughter to remember that there are people who genuinely pray for her happiness. Fading away entirely, the maternal voice begs Fiora never to forget those bonds. Snapping violently back to reality, Fiora is berated for failing to finish her chores on time. Fiora reels backward as she is viciously slapped across the face and branded a useless girl. Absorbing the stinging blow, she winces but remains quiet. Lowering her head in subservience, Fiora issues a hollow apology to her abuser, Lady Myria. Sneering down at her, Myria mocks the apology and demands Fiora articulate exactly what she did wrong. Trembling slightly, Fiora hesitates to speak. She humbly admits her failure to complete the tedious needlework assigned to her the previous night. Dripping with condescension, Myria cruelly insults Fiora's intelligence. Pressing her advantage, Myria sadistically hints that there is another sin Fiora needs to apologize for. Cupping her ear mockingly, Myria forces Fiora to utter a deeply degrading confession. Trapped in a sickeningly repetitive cycle, Fiora mechanically apologizes for the mere crime of being born. Fiora silently reflects on her mother, Fauna, who originally worked as a simple maid for Myria's mother. She bitterly recalls her illegitimate origins, conceived only because her commoner mother could not refuse the Earl's advances. Remembering fleeting brighter days, Fiora thinks of the happiness she shared with her mother while receiving her father's conditional affection. A sudden epidemic struck when Fiora was 7, tragically claiming her mother's life. Following the funeral, Fiora was entirely abandoned by her father while suffering escalating harassment from Myria and her stepmother. Banished to a dilapidated shed and treated worse than a servant, Fiora is suddenly pulled from her dark thoughts by a familiar voice. Looking up with a bruised cheek, she softly recognizes the maid, Nora. Nora gasps at the bright red slap mark, but Fiora quickly brushes off the injury and insists she can handle it alone. Fiora frantically warns Nora to stay away, terrified the maid will suffer punishment for showing her kindness. Refusing to flee, Nora fiercely declares her loyalty, crediting both Fiora and Fauna for her very survival. Demonstrating unwavering devotion, Nora gently steps closer and asks how she can assist the battered young lady. Grateful for her loyalty, Fiora tells Nora that her feelings are enough, noting their mothers were once fellow maids. Deeply moved by her companion's unwavering support, Fiora sincerely thanks Nora. Reflecting on her brutal daily life, Fiora admits that having Nora by her side is the only way she endures the mansion. Glancing toward the window, Fiora realizes there is one other vital presence that supports her fragile heart. Gazing outside, she softly whispers the name Alm. Staring at the vibrant foliage, Fiora tenderly compliments the shining leaves of her beloved plant. Despite the shed's miserable living conditions, she confesses her relief that it keeps her close enough to check on Alm easily. Remembering the past, Fiora cherishes the sapling named Alm Trius that she planted alongside her late mother. Acknowledging her age and status as an earl's mistreated daughter, Fiora dreads saying goodbye to Alm in half a year when she marries Lord Henry. Seeking comfort in her bleak circumstances, she reassures herself that her future husband is a genuinely kind man. She fondly recalls his absolute delight when she gifted him matching bookmarks pressed with Alm's delicate leaves. Staring at her reflection, Fiora desperately reminds herself that she will finally be free from this abusive household in just 6 months. A wave of melancholy washes over her as she realizes she will no longer be able to visit Alm every day. Lowering her head, she allows a fleeting moment of sadness to overtake her anticipation of freedom. While dressing, Fiora critically observes her scrawny, undernourished build in the mirror. As she mentally reviews her hidden scars, an imposing voice abruptly shatters the silence. Her cruel stepmother steps into the room, sharply demanding to know why Fiora is not ready yet. Startled by the sudden intrusion, Fiora nervously turns to address her stepmother. Feigning a cheerful tone, the wicked woman mocks Fiora's gloomy expression on the day she is scheduled to meet her important fiancé. Sneering maliciously, the stepmother insults Fiora's makeup skills by comparing her to a thieving cat just like her late mother. Pushing her psychological torment further, The older woman cruelly notes that Fiora successfully hid the dark bruise caused by Myria's slap. Fiora silently reflects on her stepmother's cunning cruelty, recognizing that it far surpasses Myria's straightforward violence. Unlike her volatile sister, the calculating stepmother intentionally inflicts severe bruises on Fiora's torso and legs where thick clothing conceals them. Brushing off the heavy tension, the stepmother smoothly readjusts her elegant posture as if nothing happened. A sudden knock at the door interrupts the abuse, announcing the highly anticipated arrival of Lord Henry. Highly suspicious of her stepmother's unusually good mood, Fiora hesitantly agrees to go meet her fiancé. Fiora stands completely frozen in shock, repeating the devastating words about their engagement dissolving. A suffocating silence hangs in the air as the crushing reality of the broken promise finally sinks in. Trembling with confusion, Fiora desperately asks Lord Henry what she did wrong to deserve his apologetic pity. Heartbroken and abandoned once again, she pleads to know the true reason behind his sudden betrayal. A solemn apology breaks the heavy silence. A resolute voice states that the devastating decision has already been finalized. The speaker reveals he has already discussed the matter with her father and stepmother. Reeling from the shock, Fiora stammers in absolute disbelief. Desperate for answers, she questions if her cruel stepmother orchestrated this sudden tragedy. She presses him to confess if he surrendered to her stepmother's demands to dissolve their engagement. Bowing his head in deep shame, the man can only offer another pitiful apology. Realizing that a wealthy commoner like Lord Henry could never withstand the pressure of an earl's household, Fiora bitterly accepts her fate. Masking her agonizing heartbreak, she graciously urges him to find another wonderful woman. She quietly whispers Lord Henry's name as a tragic final farewell. Wishing him genuine happiness, she wonders how much further she must endure this endless suffering. Suddenly, her stepmother approaches with a mockingly cheerful observation about the broken engagement. The wicked woman offers a cruel and highly sarcastic congratulation. Fiora turns to face her terrifying tormentor with deep dread. Unable to hide her overwhelming anguish, she simply asks why. She demands to know why her stepmother maliciously interfered with her only chance at happiness. Trembling with sheer frustration, Fiora asks why she wasn't just allowed to marry and finally leave the miserable mansion if she is so despised. Sneering down at her, the stepmother chillingly asks if escaping would ever atone for the sins of Fiora's mother. Basking in her twisted victory, the stepmother gloats that she became the star after her rival died and fiercely dares Fiora to rebel or run away. Using a vicious threat, she warns Fiora to imagine the horrible fate that would befall her loyal maid Nora if she ever tried to escape. Feigning false pity, she looks down at the poor girl with absolute disgust. Delivering a final crushing blow, she coldly declares that Fiora should never have been born. Later in quiet solitude, Fiora softly calls out to Alm. Staring into the empty void, she hopelessly wonders if she is doomed to live this agonizing life forever. Suddenly, a familiar voice calls out her name and shatters the bleak memory. Startled by the sudden interruption, Fiora turns her attention toward the unexpected arrival. Recognizing the visitor, she speaks Lord Seio's name in quiet astonishment. Relieved to finally find her, Lord Seio gently asks if she is all right. Brushing off her painful memories, Fiora reassures him that she was merely daydreaming about events from 3 years ago. She vividly reflects on the time when a mysterious noble wandered into the earldom from the northern forest. Reflecting on a recent encounter, Fiora admits to herself that she finds Lord Seio rather difficult to deal with. She realizes her discomfort stems from the fact that he shares the exact same eye and hair color as her cruel stepmother. Flashing back to their meetings over the past 3 years, Lord Seio observes that she never easily takes his hand. He notes with amusement that her reluctance makes her quite different from the other lowly women who constantly swarm around him. Acknowledging his failure to rescue her from her abusive home thus far, he concedes that her lack of trust is entirely justified. Stepping closer, he assures a confused Fiora that his ongoing preparations will soon be complete. Gazing intently at her, he gently urges her to hold on and wait just a little longer. Placing a hand to his chest, he solemnly swears that he will personally ensure her happiness. Left alone, Fiora silently ponders his mysterious words and wonders what he meant by those preparations. She stands in quiet contemplation as time silently passes. Fast-forwarding a few days, Fiora is suddenly alarmed by the distinct smell of smoke. Rushing outside, she screams in pure terror as she spots her precious sapling Alm engulfed in fire. Turning to see Lady Myria coolly observing the destruction, Fiora desperately questions the cause of the sudden blaze. Panicking, she frantically screams for someone to fetch water to douse the spreading flames. Staring at her tormentor in disbelief, Fiora demands to know why Myria would commit such a senseless act. Shrugging carelessly, Myria explains that her usual bullying had grown utterly boring due to Fiora's increasingly dull reactions. Smiling wickedly, Myria admits she simply wanted to see a much more entertaining expression on her sister's face. She casually reveals that she brainstormed this destructive stunt specifically to break Fiora's spirit. Gesturing to the burning plant, Myria cruelly notes that destroying the treasured sapling seemed like the perfect way to get a reaction. Laughing at Fiora's despair, the wicked sister gloats that her cruel plan hit the mark perfectly. Fiora trembles in sheer horror, unable to comprehend doing something so vile simply for amusement. Refusing Myria's command to move aside, Fiora stubbornly stands her ground and vows to put out the fire. Stepping closer to the inferno, she winces as the overwhelming heat pushes her back. Amidst the chaos, Fiora tearfully reflects that Nora's support was the only thing keeping her sane through days of endless abuse. Staring into the blaze, she realizes that losing Alm to the fire would completely break her. Watching her crumble, Myria sneers at Fiora's pathetic desperation over a mere tree's existence. Shrieking in surprise, Fiora is violently shoved toward the inferno by Myria, who commands her to burn along with the sapling. Plunging directly into the raging fire, Fiora braces herself for agonizing pain. Opening her eyes in shock, she suddenly realizes the roaring flames are completely devoid of heat. Before she can process the miracle, a mysterious voice echoes from the fire, sighing in annoyance about the noise so soon after waking up. Fiora stares in stunned silence at the mystical figure standing before her in the blazing inferno. Trembling with disbelief, she stammers out a question, asking the strange man who he is. Scoffing at her concern, the man asks if she honestly thinks he would be threatened by mere flames. Experiencing heat as a novel human sensation, the stranger casually asks Fiora if she is also feeling hot. Bewildered by how he knows her name, Fiora listens as he prioritizes her safety above all else. Turning his full attention to the bewildered girl, the mysterious man commands Fiora to give him an order. Shocked by his impossible claim that he can command the rain to quell the roaring fire, she hesitates. The man calmly insists he can save the surrounding greenery from needlessly burning if she simply gives the command. He reiterates his absolute obedience, promising to act naturally only if she orders him to do so. His vow carries the inevitable weight of spring following winter and the sun rising in the east. Stating his incredible power as an undeniable fact, he patiently waits for her decisive word. Yielding to his serene confidence, Fiora finally begs him to make it rain and extinguish the deadly flames. Accepting her command with a gentle smile, the supernatural being promises to fulfill her desperate wish. An intense buildup of magical energy suddenly surges around the enigmatic stranger as he prepares his spell. A massive, blinding burst of light erupts into the sky as his dormant power is completely unleashed. With the inferno rapidly diminishing, the man softly calls out Fiora's name once more. Fiora watches in utter awe as the fierce flames miraculously vanish before her very eyes. Gentle rain begins to pour heavily over the scorched earth, completely drowning out the remaining fire. Addressing her directly amidst the downpour, the man prepares to reveal a profound truth about their connection. The torrential rain washes over the devastated landscape, bringing immediate salvation to the burning grounds. Reminding her of his absolute loyalty, he reaffirms that he can do anything as long as she commands it. Utterly overwhelmed by the miraculous rescue, Fiora desperately asks the stranger exactly who he is. Suddenly, an arrogant voice interrupts the awe-inspiring moment, shattering the peaceful atmosphere. Furious that a stranger interfered without permission, an indignant noble demands to know the man's identity while the stranger coldly identifies the noble as a pest harming Fiora. Unbothered by the screaming man, the magical being casually tells the noisy noble to be quiet for a moment. Seething with offended pride, the furious antagonist repeats the word pest in utter disbelief. Unable to comprehend the sheer disrespect, the noble fumes over being called an insect by a common stranger. Fiora attempts to de-escalate the situation, but the stranger coldly clarifies that the noble is actually lower than an insect because insects at least help pollinate flowers. Trembling with pure rage, the insulted noble demands if they understand the severe consequences of making a fool out of him. Swearing bitter vengeance, The furious man threatens to make both the stranger and Fiora pay dearly for their absolute insolence. Dangling helplessly in the air, Lady Myria desperately screams to be let go while Alm ominously considers his next move. Terrified by the dizzying height, Myria begs for mercy as Alm casually asks Fiora if she wants him to release the restraining vines right now. Staring upward in utter bewilderment, Fiora asks the mysterious young man if he is the one controlling the thick vines. Confirming her suspicion, Alm matter-of-factly states that he restrained the pest for daring to harm her. Panicking at the sight of their trapped master, the servants scream Lady Myria's name as Alm reveals he used his powers without waiting for Fiora's command. Startled by his unwavering loyalty, Fiora softly repeats the word command while processing the unbelievable situation. Gathering her resolve, Fiora hesitantly asks if Alm will safely lower Myria to the ground if she requests it. Questioning her remarkable mercy, Alm asks if she truly intends to forgive her abuser while Fiora simply insists she does not want anyone to die. Amused by her inherent kindness, Alm reluctantly agrees to lower the struggling girl as Fiora expresses her profound gratitude. Dropping Myria unceremoniously to the dirt, Alm bluntly remarks that a messy blood splatter would have been too much of a hassle to deal with anyway. Rushing toward their fallen master, the frantic servants desperately scream Myria's name to check if she survived the fall. Processing the bizarre rescue, Fiora suddenly realizes a startling truth about the magical intervention. Staring at the empty patch of dirt where her cherished sapling used to reside, Fiora stands paralyzed in absolute shock. Overwhelmed by the impossible reality, she realizes that the little alm tree has completely vanished without leaving a single trace behind. Leaning in closely, the mysterious stranger teasingly asks if she was worried about him before revealing that he is actually the human manifestation of her missing tree. Gazing down at her total confusion, Alm gently asks if she still fails to understand his true identity. Struggling to grasp the supernatural revelation, Fiora can only utter a breathless whisper of sheer disbelief. Looking directly into her eyes, the beautiful stranger formally introduces himself as Alm. Offering his full title, he warmly addresses Fiora and reveals his true name to be Alm Trius. A sudden nostalgic flashback shows a younger Fiora being asked to name a small seed so she would grow more emotionally attached to it. Remembering that precious childhood moment, Fiora cheerfully bestowed the grand name Alm Trius upon the tiny plant. Snapping back to the present reality, a stunned Fiora questions if this magnificent man is truly her beloved little tree. Smiling warmly to confirm her realization, Alm looks down at Fiora as she marvels at his leaf-colored eyes and greenish-silver hair. Taking in his full appearance, Fiora notices his brilliantly embroidered clothing and realizes he is dressed remarkably like a holy priest. Astonished by his divine attire, she points out his striking resemblance to a reverent priest of the Millennial Tree Order. Smiling proudly at her observation, Alm proclaims that he is indeed the very world tree that the Millennial Tree Order worships so fervently. Completely overwhelmed by this monumental revelation, Fiora repeats his sacred title in pure shock. Remembering the grand legends, Fiora recalls that the world tree is a godlike entity renowned by everyone across the entire realm. Expanding on the myth, she remembers that this legendary silver-trunked tree regulates magical energy and performs miraculous deeds throughout the world. Sympathizing with her utter disbelief, Alm acknowledges that it is hard to comprehend since even children know the sacred tree protects humanity from the evil black beasts. Revealing his true nature, the mysterious figure explains he was simply mimicking an ordinary plant but is actually the next-generation world tree. Astonished by the title, Fiora questions him as he casually notes that even a great tree must eventually wither. Elaborating on his origins, he explains that short-lived humans have forgotten the 1,000-year life cycle and reveals the current world tree will die within a decade. He adds that the ancients understood this cycle perfectly, which is precisely why the organization protecting the tree is named the Millennial Tree Order. Continuing his lesson, he details the strict conditions of succession and notes that whoever raises the world tree gains immense power as its master. Shocked by the implication, Fiora tentatively pieces together the truth and asks about Alm's true master. Pointing directly at her, Alm definitively declares that Fiora is the one he serves. Reeling from the impossible revelation, Fiora hesitantly obeys as Alm instructs her to place her hand on the ground to prove her newfound power. Guiding her through the magical process, he tells her to command a dormant seed to arise and let its flower bloom. After inquiring about her favorite flower, he instructs her to whisper her desire for pale pink roses directly into the earth. Channeling her latent abilities, Fiora watches in amazement as thick magical vines rapidly sprout from the seemingly barren ground. Radiant pink roses burst into bloom, prompting Alm to praise his master's incredible and expectation-defying power. Smiling warmly at the beautiful floral display, he affectionately compliments how perfectly the magic suits her. Looking around the dilapidated shed, Alm bluntly comments on its shabby condition while Fiora laments hosting the world tree in such squalor. Suddenly leaning in closely, Alm notices a dark mark near her chest and curiously inspects the bruised flesh. Flustered by his sudden proximity, Fiora shrieks and hastily covers herself as Alm confusedly asks what is wrong. Apologizing for her outburst, she frantically realizes a strange, rose-like mark has suddenly materialized upon her chest. Unfazed by her panic, Alm calmly identifies the unfamiliar emblem as the legendary mark of the sacred flower. He explains that by using her newfound powers to make the roses bloom, she has marked herself as the saint chosen by the world tree. Shifting his focus entirely, Alm gently questions Fiora about a painful burn lingering on her finger from earlier in the day. Surprised by his sudden observation, she downplays the injury and insists she is entirely used to enduring such minor pains. Ignoring her protests, Alm tenderly takes her injured hand and softly presses his lips directly against the burn. A gentle and warm light suddenly radiates from the point of contact as his magical healing energy flows seamlessly into her skin. Blushing furiously at his intimate gesture, she stammers in shock while Alm calmly credits the healing magic to the tears of the world tree. Overwhelmed by his unexpected kindness, Fiora tightly clutches her fully healed hand and softly thanks him for the relief. Noting her intense exhaustion from the non-stop magical revelations, Alm gently suggests they finally get some desperately needed rest. Hesitating before lying down, a nervous Fiora calls out softly to grab his attention once more. Gripping her blankets tightly, she timidly asks if he could possibly return to his original resting spot while she sleeps. Taken aback by the request, Alm dramatically pouts and asks if she genuinely dislikes his new human appearance. Flustered but sincere, Fiora immediately reassures the stunning young man that he is incredibly beautiful in his human form. Feeling overwhelmed after the day's chaotic events, Fiora requests to be alone just to calm down. Flustered, she internally admits that she doesn't want Alm to see her messy sleeping face. Respecting her boundaries, Alm agrees to revert to his dormant seed form until she calls for him again. Expressing joy over their conversations today, he explains that she only needs to touch the seed when she is ready to see him again. Relieved and grateful, Fiora tenderly thanks her magical companion. Recalling a fond memory of her mother, Fiora smiles as she reflects on how happy she was to finally speak with Alm. In the heartwarming flashback, a young Fiora joyfully declares that she loves Alm Trius the most. Her loving mother gently reminds her never to forget the tree's name even as she grows up. The memory hints at a mysterious promise, suggesting that remembering his name will be important someday. Waking up the next day, Fiora softly greets the seed with a warm good morning. Stretching as she rises, she nervously wonders how she will explain Alm and the blooming garden roses to the hostile mansion staff. Suddenly, a loud commotion outside violently interrupts her anxious thoughts. Armed guards abruptly storm into her shed, aggressively declaring that they have finally caught her. Panicking at the sight of their uniforms, Fiora realizes with horror that the Millennial Tree Order has come for her. Lady Myria steps out from behind the guards, laughing maniacally as she mocks Fiora's pathetic situation. Branding her a criminal, Myria accuses Fiora of bringing in a suspicious man and using illegal tree tools to manipulate plants. Fiora stammers in confusion, knowing nothing about these miraculous tools crafted from the world tree. Realizing Myria framed her to the authorities, Fiora understands that possessing such a heavily regulated item is a massive crime. One of the smug guards grabs Fiora, sneering about her supposed criminal status. Grabbing her chin forcefully, the leering guard creeps closer and comments on her beautiful features. During the violent struggle, the guard notices the seed and excitedly snatches it away, assuming it to be the illegal tree tool. Instantly reacting to the unwanted contact, a dark aura emanates from the stolen seed as Alm's furious voice demands to know who touched him. Ignoring the ominous warning, the guard yells at Fiora to stop struggling just as the seed unleashes its power. Massive, violent roots suddenly erupt from the tiny seed, shattering the guard's grip in an instant. Emerging from the chaotic burst of magic, Alm immediately searches for Fiora amidst the terrified shouting. The screaming guard collapses in agony as the violent roots mercilessly crush him. Thrashing wildly on the floor, the terrified soldier wails that his arm has been completely destroyed. Rushing to her side, a highly protective Alm frantically asks Fiora if she is hurt. Turning his lethal glare toward the remaining intruders, Alm prepares to deal with the next threat. Standing protectively in front of his master, the summoned guardian glares down the corrupt knights with murderous intent. Striding into the chaotic scene, a new figure demands to know the cause of the commotion regarding an illegal tree tool. Identifying the accused priest, the newcomer confirms that Silas is a registered member of the Millennial Tree Order. Glaring sternly at the opposing guards, he questions their true intentions. He directly challenges the guards, asking if they truly mean to pick a fight with their powerful religious order. Terrified by the threat, the guards quickly stammer their denials and try to avoid a conflict. Silas frantically interrupts, begging Lord Hartz not to be deceived by these heretics who illegally possess Arbor artifacts. Hartz gravely states he cannot overlook such a serious accusation and turns his critical gaze toward Fiora and Alm. Confidently stepping forward, Alm remarks that resolving this will be quick since Hartz is a wielder of Arbor artifacts. Shocking the onlookers, Alm casts a spell commanding the divided branch to breathe life anew and take root. Hartz watches in total astonishment as his wooden staff suddenly begins to react to the raw magical power. The ancient artifact rapidly sprouts fresh green vines and leaves right in the middle of the bishop's hands. While Silas stubbornly screams about illegal artifacts, Hartz stares at his blossoming staff in absolute disbelief. Without any warning, Hartz violently strikes Silas across the face with his newly bloomed staff. The sheer force of the unexpected blow sends the arrogant priest crashing down to the dirt. Ignoring the priest's confused protests, Hartz commands Silas to stay silent and declares that Alm and Fiora are not to be insulted. Hartz explains that Arbor artifacts are crafted from the Great World Tree and only a saintess or an equal being can transform them. Glaring down at his subordinate, he reminds Silas that any true member of the order should understand the gravity of this miracle. Falling to his knees in pure reverence, Hartz bows his head and begs Alm for mercy. He promises that the order will punish Silas internally and desperately pleads for the young man's life to be spared. Alm coldly states that Silas's life is worth taking for hurting Fiora, throwing the battered priest into a state of sheer panic. After Fiora gently intervenes to assure him she is completely fine, Alm reluctantly agrees to back down. Realizing the bishop struck Silas publicly to shield him from a harsher execution, Fiora watches as Hartz thanks her for her generous understanding. Rising gracefully from his bow, the man finally introduces himself as Hartz. He formally states his high-ranking position as a bishop within the Millennium Tree Order. Fiora politely returns the greeting, introducing herself and her mysterious companion Alm. Hartz offers another sincere apology to Lady Fiora and Lord Alm for the immense disrespect they endured. Gathering his courage, the bishop boldly asks if he might hear more about the incredible power Alm displayed earlier. Noting Fiora's confusion, Hartz insists that the order also holds responsibility for the physical wounds inflicted upon her body. He formally invites both of them to the order's facility to treat her injuries, prompting a shocked scream of outrage from someone off-screen. The scene shifts to reveal a furious Lady Myria witnessing the prestigious invitation. Realizing she can no longer stay at the Earl's house after the recent chaotic events, Fiora tells Alm she trusts Lord Hartz enough to visit the order and asks for his agreement. Agreeing to the plan, Alm firmly declares that he will personally intervene if anything happens to Fiora again. Lord Hartz instructs his subordinates to escort them to the facility, promising to follow shortly after. With the departure settled, Hartz turns his intense focus toward the remaining individuals. Hartz directly addresses an enraged Lady Myria, confirming her identity as the daughter of the Earl's house. Panicking about her agonizing condition, Myria frantically demands that Hartz heal her injured arm immediately. Desperate for relief, she pleads with the bishop, assuming his high status and ability to use Arbor artifacts will allow him to erase her bruise in an instant. Staring coldly down at her, Hartz flatly states that healing the injury is completely impossible. Horrified by the diagnosis, Myria realizes that neither Hartz nor any other specialized bishop can cure the mark, leaving her permanently disfigured. Hartz explains that the thorned bruise is an unhealable warning sign triggered when someone other than a legitimate contractor or a holy being touches an Arbor artifact. Begging for an alternative solution, Myria attempts to manipulate Hartz by claiming her sister Fiora would be deeply saddened if the hideous bruise remained. Narrowing his eyes in deep disgust, Hartz sharply repeats Myria's description of the bruise as a hideous thing. Refusing her manipulative plea, he coldly commands Myria to first apologize directly to Lady Fiora. As Myria gasps in shock, Hartz reveals he noticed older, unrelated bruises on Fiora's body that were distinctly different from the injuries inflicted by Silas today. He rebukes Myria's false sisterly concern, pointing out that Fiora was clearly terrified of her and reminding her that she was the one who maliciously reported Fiora as a heretic in the first place. Vowing to investigate the household's abusive circumstances later, Hartz firmly declares that the Order must protect Lady Fiora. Turning his back on the wicked sister, Hartz suggests that the stubborn bruise might only be cured by Lord Alm or Lady Fiora themselves. Myria is left standing in stunned, horrified silence as the reality of her inescapable punishment sets in. Meanwhile, an attendant respectfully guides Lady Fiora and Lord Alm through the Order's grand facility. The attendant gracefully gestures toward an open door, inviting the weary pair inside. Instructing them to wait comfortably, the attendant relays that Bishop Hartz will come to speak with them shortly. Expressing her sincere gratitude, Fiora politely thanks the attendant as they are offered further assistance. Exhausted from the turbulent day, Fiora sighs in relief, noting how refreshing it feels to finally wash off the mud in a warm bath. Sitting quietly in the peaceful room, she reflects on how long it has been since she experienced such a deeply relaxing night. She marvels at the kindness of the sisters who even prepared a fresh, beautiful dress for her to wear, though she feels slightly guilty for the trouble. Breaking the comfortable silence, Alm softly calls Fiora's name and states that he has a favor to ask now that they are finally alone. Staring intently at her, he shockingly demands that she take off her clothes. Startled by the sudden and intimate command, a deeply flustered Fiora confusedly questions his intentions. Stepping closer, Alm reveals his genuine concern, noting that the old bruises hidden beneath her clothes from her past abuse are still lingering alongside today's injuries. Cupping her chin gently, Alm asks a speechless Fiora if she honestly thought he wouldn't notice the pain she was silently enduring. Alm calmly explains that pressing his lips against her skin will instantly heal any wound or bruise just like yesterday's burn. Blushing deeply, Fiora genuinely thanks Alm for his caring intentions. She frantically refuses the offer, utterly horrified by the overwhelming thought of his lips touching her entire body. Flustered by his confusion, Fiora tries to explain that while her physical body would heal, her heart would be completely exhausted by such intimate contact. Sighing in resignation, Alm admits he cannot comprehend the complex human heart and drops the suggestion. Fiora silently realizes that despite their easy communication, Alm's inhuman nature creates a fundamental disconnect between them. Snapping out of her thoughts, she watches in confusion as Alm suddenly produces a small cup. Panicking at the sight of him suddenly slicing his own wrist, Fiora screams in absolute horror. A mystical, transparent liquid begins dripping steadily from his self-inflicted wound into the waiting cup. Alm calmly explains that cutting himself is simply the quickest way to collect his healing sap. He casually reassures the terrified girl by showing her that the deep gash on his arm has already completely healed. Scooping up some of the glowing sap, he gently applies it directly to the dark bruises marring her skin. Fiora gasps in sheer amazement as the painful marks vanish without a trace in a matter of seconds. Pleased with his alternative solution, Alm notes that applying sap avoids kissing and spares her from any mental burden. Staring at him with deep concern, Fiora gently stops him and states she has an important request. She firmly promises that from now on, she will immediately tell him whenever she gets hurt. Blushing furiously, she begs him to stop hurting his own body, offering to let him kiss her to heal her as long as they are alone. Surprised by her sudden compromise, Alm questions why she would willingly endure the kissing that embarrassed her so much earlier. Lowering her gaze, Fiora softly admits that enduring her own embarrassment is far better than watching him hurt himself. Touched by her selflessness, Alm gazes down at his master with a newfound sense of gentle wonder. Smirking softly, he calls her strange for prioritizing someone else's physical well-being over her own emotional comfort. Fiora quickly fires back, retorting that by human standards, he is the one who is far stranger. Smiling at his agreement, she internally notes that his core nature as the great world tree makes him fundamentally alien to human logic. She resolves to stay vigilant, realizing he would naturally sacrifice himself without a second thought. Staring at his back, Fiora accepts the heavy responsibility of being the true master of this powerful entity. A sudden knock interrupts their quiet moment as Hartz announces his presence from behind the door. Entering the room, the dignified knight formally apologizes for intruding at such a late hour. Fiora politely invites him in as Hartz explains he felt it was urgent they speak as soon as possible. Before beginning their main discussion, Hartz intensely observes Fiora and notes that she had several severe wounds and bruises earlier that day. Narrowing his eyes suspiciously, Hartz demands to know how her injuries vanished completely, stating that not even the Order's artifacts possess such miraculous, instantaneous healing power. Pondering her next move, Fiora anxiously wonders if she should honestly reveal to Lord Hartz that Alm is the next world tree. Fretting over her secret role as Alm's master, she realizes that his magical tears and sap hold incredible power. Dreading the potential fallout, she worries that a single misstep in revealing this truth will surely ignite a massive uproar. Interrupting her spiraling thoughts, Alm softly calls out Fiora's name. Noticing her deep distress, Alm gazes at Fiora with quiet concern. Startled by his voice, Fiora slowly lifts her head from her anxious reverie. Locking eyes with her companion, she silently processes the heavy burden of their shared secret. Meanwhile, Hartz watches the silent exchange between the two with a sharp and calculating gaze. Sensing her immense apprehension, Hartz gently assures Lady Fiora that she does not need to worry so much. Leaning in slightly, the bishop casually reveals that he already has a solid idea regarding Lord Alm's true identity. Dropping a massive revelation, Hartz boldly questions if Lord Alm is actually an incarnation of the world-protecting world tree. Shocked by his deadly accuracy, Fiora gasps in pure astonishment. Mirroring her surprise, Alm narrows his eyes at the surprisingly perceptive bishop. Realizing that hiding the truth would only complicate matters further, Fiora quickly decides to confess. Gathering her courage, she firmly confirms that Hartz's bold assumption is completely correct. Nodding solemnly, she explicitly states that Alm is indeed the legendary world tree taking on a human form. Smiling warmly at her complete honesty, Hartz politely thanks her for the confirmation. Explaining his tactical approach, Hartz notes he deliberately tested her hesitation to ensure they could now converse with absolute peace of mind. Seeing through the bishop's cunning facade, Alm dryly remarks on his twisted personality for intentionally testing Fiora. Pivoting the conversation, Alm asks why they were brought to the facility as Hartz prepares to reveal his true intentions. Promising to speak plainly, Hartz insists that while his apology and offer of rest were sincere, he harbors an ulterior motive. Looking directly at the pair, the bishop officially requests that they lend their immense power to the order. Processing the sudden request, Fiora and Alm stare back at the bishop in stunned silence. When asked if the order is in trouble, Hartz clarifies that the issue actually concerns the waning power of the world tree itself. Explaining the dire situation in secret, Hartz reveals that the magical power of the guardian trees is quietly weakening across various regions. Reflecting on her knowledge, Fiora recalls that guardian trees are protective offshoots grown directly from cuttings of the great world tree. Hartz admits that the order secretly noticed a dark shadow corrupting the world tree's beast-warding power over a decade ago. Highlighting the severity of the crisis, he mentions that a top-secret notice was eventually issued strictly to high-ranking order members. Detailing the ominous notice, Hartz states that the dying world tree would soon be replaced by a new sprout requiring ultimate protection. Connecting all the pieces together, Fiora finally realizes why the bishop instantly recognized Alm's divine nature. Hartz gravely explains that some guardian trees have already lost their leaves and weakened, leaving regions vulnerable to immediate attacks by black beasts. Addressing Fiora and Alm directly, he formally requests their help to revive the waning power of these crucial guardian trees. Fiora turns to her companion, softly asking Alm if he is capable of performing such a miraculous feat. Alm confidently replies that although he has never attempted it before, he should be fully capable of restoring the trees. He declares with unwavering devotion that if it is Fiora's wish, he will gladly prove his immense power to her. Reassured by his absolute confidence, Fiora nods in understanding and accepts his promise. Turning back to Hartz, Fiora humbly states that while she is unsure of their exact helpfulness, they are more than willing to cooperate. In exchange for their vital assistance, she politely informs Lord Hartz that she has a specific favor to ask of him. She firmly requests that she and Alm be allowed to reside safely within the Order's facilities for the time being. Hartz instantly agrees, just as Fiora admits that returning to her abusive family's Earl mansion is no longer an option. The bishop waves off her concern entirely, assuring the young woman that providing them sanctuary is a remarkably simple matter. Later that night, A deeply flustered Fiora asks Alm if he truly intends for them to sleep in the exact same bed. Staring at her innocently, Alm tilts his head and asks if such a sleeping arrangement is somehow forbidden. He logically explains that resting in his humanoid form allows him to protect her instantly, noting that Silas's attack only succeeded because he was trapped in his vulnerable seed state. Conceding to his protective logic, Fiora agrees but nervously asks if they can at least maintain a little physical distance between them. Alm quickly agrees with a smile, teasingly pointing out that her racing heart wouldn't be able to rest at all if he stayed too close. Settling into the comfortable sheets, the two companions lie quietly side by side in the dim room. Breaking the peaceful silence, Fiora curiously asks Alm if a divine entity like the World Tree actually needs to sleep. When he hesitates to answer, Fiora quickly worries that her highly personal question might have been horribly impolite. Alm thoughtfully reassures her, explaining that while it differs from human rest, he does experience a state where his overall level of consciousness drops. He clarifies that in his tree or humanoid forms, a part of his mind always monitors the outside world, unlike his completely blank seed state. Realizing the implication of his constant awareness, Fiora asks if he learned human language simply by listening to everyone while he was planted as a tree. Confirming her theory, Alm reveals that he has retained perfectly clear memories of everything since he first sprouted 14 years ago. He further explains that alongside those memories, he also inherited immense linguistic knowledge directly from the previous World Tree, noting that his existence fundamentally differs from humanity. Staring at him in quiet awe, Fiora murmurs that the World Tree truly is a godlike existence. Alm gazes back at her tenderly, allowing a comfortable and intimate silence to settle between them once more. Remembering their upcoming mission, Alm gently urges her to rest since they must head to the church housing the guardian tree early the next morning. As Alm bids her goodnight, Fiora drifts off while comforted by his pleasant scent, feeling as though she is safely embraced by a giant tree. Watching over his master as she finally slumbers, Alm softly wishes her sweet dreams. Sunlight pierces the room as a brand new morning dawns on the peaceful sanctuary. Journeying toward the guardian tree, the group endures a tedious half-day carriage ride. Noticing Fiora's sleepiness, Alm casually offers her a sip of his sap, which she quickly declines. Suddenly, a violent thud rocks the carriage, causing Fiora to cry out in surprise. Recovering quickly, Fiora confirms she is unharmed just as a desperate plea for help pierces the air. Looking outside, they spot a terrified child begging frantically for someone to assist him. The weeping child explains that his village is currently under attack by terrifying black beasts. Analyzing the grim situation, Hartz wonders aloud if the guardian tree's power has weakened enough to allow beasts into human settlements. Prioritizing civilian safety, Hartz politely asks Fiora if they can take a small detour. Apologizing for the delay, the knight firmly states that protecting people from black beasts is the sworn duty of the Millennium Tree Order. Nodding in understanding, Fiora nervously agrees to the sudden change of plans. Without warning, a menacing presence violently interrupts their conversation. A grotesque black beast suddenly emerges from the shadows to block their path. Springing into action, Hartz commands everyone to stay safely inside the carriage while he handles the threat. Unleashing his magic, the brave knight conjures a powerful blade of water to strike the monsters. Overwhelmed by sheer numbers, Hartz finds himself struggling against the relentless monstrous swarm. Refusing to sit idly by, Fiora activates her magic seed and commands vibrant flowers to bloom. As massive vines erupt from the earth, Fiora urges a bewildered Hartz to use the distraction to fall back. Intervening smoothly, Alm calmly announces that retreating is completely unnecessary. Stepping forward with absolute confidence, the magical guardian prepares to unleash his true power. Turning to his master, Alm softly asks Fiora if she truly wishes to save the struggling knight. Guiding her latent abilities, Alm instructs Fiora on exactly how to command the newly summoned roses. Following his precise guidance, Fiora confidently orders the magical flowers to scatter and dance in the wind. A devastating flurry of mystical petals completely obliterates the terrifying beast horde in an instant. Shocked by the display, Hartz asks what just happened, prompting Fiora to explain that Alm taught her the whispered spell. Still reeling from the sheer scale of the magic, Hartz verifies that Fiora created all the roses herself. The knight notes that the spell's lingering melody sounded remarkably like a beautiful song. Connecting the dots, Hartz asks Fiora if her powerful magic was actually caused by the legendary tree song. Completely unfamiliar with the term, Fiora tilts her head in genuine confusion. Taking on the role of teacher, Hartz explains that the tree song was originally the miraculous melody sung by the world tree. Detailing the lore, he elaborates that human cantors require artifacts to simulate the world tree's rustling leaves, but their power always falls far short of the original. Explaining the ancient lore, Hartz notes that the holy melody is called the tree song and that rare humans capable of mimicking it are known as cantors. However, he trails off as he ponders the sheer impossibility of the situation unfolding before him. He marvels at how Lady Fiora managed to create magnificent roses and completely annihilate the black beasts without using any tools at all. Overwhelmed by the display of pure power, Hartz admits that even he cannot fully comprehend just how great an achievement this truly is. Shifting his focus away from the miracle, Hartz respectfully addresses Lord Alm to ask a pressing question. Acknowledging the prompt, Alm casually asks if it is all right to leave the newly bloomed roses exactly as they are. He proudly declares that these holy roses, bloomed from his master Fiora's power, will act like guardian trees to ward off black beasts and protect the village from now on. While the villagers eagerly praise her as an amazing saintess and reunite with their loved ones, Fiora quietly reminds herself that she does not hold that sacred title. Reflecting on her own worth, she finds deep solace in the fact that even someone like her was able to genuinely help people in need. She cherishes the newfound warmth of being able to smile peacefully while standing safely by someone's side. Experiencing such unfamiliar and gentle affection makes her feel a little ticklish inside. Despite the absolute novelty of these warm emotions, she admits that being appreciated genuinely makes her happy. Guided to their next destination, the group is politely ushered forward through the holy grounds. A guide begins discussing the weakened guardian tree located in the church's courtyard when an angry shout suddenly interrupts the peaceful tour. As the guide suggests that seeing the tree's condition would be faster than explaining it, a furious woman loudly demands to know why her bruise cannot be healed. Fiora gasps in shock as she immediately recognizes the screaming woman causing the scene as Lady Myria. Myria furiously lashes out at Silas and the so-called monster man, prompting a sharp retort calling her the truly inhuman one. Amidst the chaotic screaming, an older man calmly greets Hartz after a long time apart. After questioning why Hartz is there and if the bishop summoned him, the man plainly states he came purely on business. Stepping forward into the hostile situation, Fiora formally introduces herself as Myria's sister-in-law and apologizes for all the trouble her relative has caused. Noting that the younger sister seems far more reasonable, the man orders his subordinates to take the noisy and protesting Myria back to the Earl's mansion at once. Continuing her furious tirade, Myria screams that the clergy should be ashamed for failing to heal her despite the absolute fortune she paid them. Maintaining his strict composure, the man firmly reiterates that healing her particular bruise is entirely impossible even with the order's advanced healing arts. He then sharply accuses her of trying to selfishly cut in line to receive Priest Silas's exclusive healing treatments. Declaring the core tenets of the Millennium Tree Order, he states that they open their doors to those in true distress and will never bow to royalty or wealth. Delivering his final verdict, he coldly commands the arrogant noblewoman to leave the premises immediately. Utterly humiliated and at a total loss for words, Myria lets out a frustrated grunt. Reluctantly agreeing to withdraw for the day, Myria angrily barks a strict order for Fiora to leave with her at once. Standing her ground with newfound courage, Fiora calmly informs an enraged Myria that she has business here and will definitely not be returning to the mansion. The scene concludes as Myria is left utterly stunned and furious over her traditionally subservient sister's sudden act of open rebellion. Alm threateningly asks Silas which side of his face is better as he grabs him firmly. Alm aggressively threatens to make roses bloom directly on Silas's face if he ever dares to pester Fiora again. Clicking his tongue in immense frustration, Silas violently breaks free from Alm's iron grip. Lord Hartz formally apologizes for the chaotic commotion while sympathetically noting Fiora's immense struggles with her abusive family. Processing a sudden revelation, Silas immediately announces that he finally remembers something important. Pointing directly at her, Silas confidently identifies the young woman standing before him as Fiora. Silas recalls that the bishop specifically mentioned a girl named Fiora who would be formally entrusted with the guardian tree. Chuckling lightly, Silas realizes that Hartz's previously unexpected arrival at this specific branch finally makes perfect sense. Stepping forward with a newfound intensity, Silas seriously addresses Fiora directly. He intensely demands to know if she truly possesses the miraculous power required to revive the dying guardian tree. Fiora stares back in stunned silence as the heavy weight of Silas's desperate question hangs thickly in the air. After Fiora firmly confirms her abilities, Silas desperately asks if her words are true before she reassuringly nods in agreement. Gasping in sudden shock, Fiora watches helplessly as Silas abruptly loses consciousness. Alm quickly intercepts the collapsing healer before he can crash into Fiora and angrily demands to know what he is doing. Alm firmly supports Silas's limp body as the completely exhausted healer remains entirely unresponsive. Peering closely at the unconscious man, Fiora sympathetically notes his terrible dark circles and realizes he is simply fast asleep. Hartz calmly instructs Alm to carry the sleeping healer to the priest's dedicated nap room. Fiora gratefully thanks Alm for catching Silas and saving her from a painful collision, though Alm casually brushes it off as nothing. Alm grumbles honestly that he would have much rather just pulled Fiora into his own arms instead of catching the exhausted man. Fiora blushes slightly at Alm's fiercely protective and intimate declaration while processing the chaotic events. Turning her attention back to the bishop, Fiora curiously asks Hartz if Lord Silas is indeed a dedicated healer. Hartz nods solemnly and immediately confirms her accurate observation. Hartz explains that Lady Myria likely chased rumors of Silas, an exceptionally serious young healer who works tirelessly without ever sparing time for sleep. Fiora thoughtfully deduces that Silas's immense fame and popularity make him an incredibly busy and sought-after person. Surprising Fiora, Hartz gravely reveals his belief that Silas's extreme exhaustion stems from something far deeper than mere busyness. Hartz tragically explains that a vicious black beast attacked orphan Silas when he was just a young boy. Driven by childhood trauma, Silas sacrifices his own sleep to desperately research ways to restore the guardian tree and prevent catastrophic black beast attacks on human settlements. Absorbing the tragic backstory, Fiora realizes with horror that Zeisa's village would have faced utter devastation if they had acted even a little later. Hartz solemnly concludes that the rapid weakening of the protective trees is the direct fuel for Silas's mounting, sleep-deprived frustration. Fiora clenches her fists with renewed determination, silently resolving to revive the guardian tree no matter the overwhelming cost. Arriving at the dying guardian tree, Silas solemnly notes that its fading power desperately needs to be restored. Gazing at the withered plant, Fiora feels a wave of anxiety before Alm gently assures her that everything will be okay. He instructs her to simply sing the tree song he taught her earlier with all her heart. For the finer magical adjustments, Alm casually mentions that he will just shed a few drops of his own blood. Panicking at the thought of him hurting himself again, Fiora frantically protests before Alm teases her for having so little faith in his abilities. Reassuring her, the magical guardian explains that this specific tree was originally grown from a mere cutting of the Great World Tree. Emphasizing his inherent connection to all flora, Alm reminds Fiora that the most important element for the ritual is the genuine emotion she pours into her song. Stealing her resolve, Fiora nods firmly and promises to do her absolute best to project her feelings. Trusting completely in Alm's unwavering support, the young girl closes her eyes and prepares to sing. A beautiful, ethereal melody escapes her lips as she sings of branches and leaves deeply taking root in the earth. Pouring her soul into the magic, she continues her melodic prayer to greet the glorious dawn once again. Radiant particles of golden light begin swirling miraculously through the air as the onlookers marvel at the mystical phenomenon. Bursting with sudden vibrant life, the guardian tree sprouts countless fresh leaves, prompting Fiora to joyfully celebrate her success. Suddenly sensing an unexpected presence, Alm curiously calls out to his master. A brilliantly glowing object slowly descends from the newly revived canopy directly toward a startled Fiora. Reaching out instinctively, she gently catches the mysterious, luminous orb in her delicate hands. Examining her prize, Fiora wonders aloud if the incredibly large fruit is a rare silver apple. Without warning, a sharp cracking sound echoes from the metallic fruit's smooth surface. The silver shell violently fractures open to reveal a dazzling burst of concentrated magical energy. Staring in sheer disbelief, Silas screams as a tiny, fluffy weasel-like creature pops completely out of the shell. Fiora worriedly checks on the hyperventilating Silas as he frantically mutters about a legendary spirit being born directly from a tree. Utterly dumbfounded by the miracle, the knowledgeable knight struggles to process the mythical event unfolding before his very eyes. Completely captivated by the adorable little beast, Fiora recalls old legends stating that such spirits are direct kin to the Great World Tree. Regaining a fraction of his composure, Silas admits it is perfectly natural for Fiora to doubt the reality of the situation. Despite his own lingering shock, the knight confidently declares that the tiny being in her arms is undoubtedly a genuine spirit. Pointing out a specific detail, Silas explains that the blooming flower marking on its front leg serves as undeniable proof of its divine lineage. He elaborates that these magical entities typically assume the forms of various beasts and always bear a distinct floral crest somewhere on their bodies. Marveling at the sheer rarity, Silas struggles to comprehend how one could be born from a mere guardian tree instead of a designated spirit tree. Intervening smoothly, Alm explains the simple truth that both guardian and spirit trees were originally rooted from cuttings of the Great World Tree. Clarifying the human misconception, Alm states that spirit trees are simply guardian trees that happen to possess enough latent power to physically manifest a spirit. Hartz explains to Fiora that the immense power of her tree song means a strong guardian tree will now naturally produce a spirit. He continues detailing how her song did not just revive the weakened guardian tree but miraculously transformed it into a powerful spirit tree. Realizing the massive magnitude of her actions, Fiora nervously wonders if she completely overdid it. Her anxious internal thoughts are suddenly interrupted by an unexpected and curious noise. A mysterious and gentle voice suddenly speaks up to express its sincere gratitude to her. The disembodied voice deeply thanks her for stepping in to save both the guardian tree and the newly formed spirit. Acknowledging her incredible feat, the voice declares that Fiora must be the one who miraculously accomplished all of this. Before she can fully process the profound praise, a small creature suddenly pounces on her while gratefully thanking her for saving the land. Flustered by the sudden ambush of affection, Fiora frantically begs the overly excited Great Spirit to calm down and stop biting. Observing the playful and chaotic struggle, Alm calmly explains that the spirited little creature is a direct creation of her beautiful tree song. Alm notes that the creature is fiercely attached to its creator and will mercilessly attack anyone who threatens her, prompting Fiora to wonder if the spirit actually understands his violent words. Gazing down at the affectionately clinging creature, Fiora gently asks the Great Spirit if it plans on staying by her side from now on. As the spirit enthusiastically chirps its absolute agreement, Fiora internally marvels at how she has suddenly gained both Alm and this powerful Great Spirit as loyal companions. Alm notices her sudden reflective silence and calls out her name, but she quickly shakes her head to dismiss his concern. Brushing off her fleeting thoughts with a warm and gentle smile, Fiora reassures her companion that it is absolutely nothing to worry about.